is to start by introducing this amazing group of folks that I get to be in conversation with and that are here. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about them. So first off, I want to introduce you all to Princess Johnson. Now, Princess Johnson is an international dancer, choreographer, entrepreneur, and motivator. She has choreographed dances since she was 8 years old. Yes, she completed a dance degree at UNCG along with her business degree. She's interned with the Richmond Ballet in Richmond, Virginia as a dance management intern, where she worked along the business manager and development director to learn about nonprofit dance company management. She's taught classes at Triple Threat Dance Center in Winston-Salem and High Point, and established Royal Expressions Contemporary Ballet in 2009. She's created 6 original dance productions, taught thousands of students, and even led a team to bring world-renowned ballerina Misty Copeland to Greensboro, North Carolina in 2014, as well as Alicia Graf Mack of Alvin Ailey in 2015. She's received a number of awards, and also in her spare time enjoys being the wife of Shane Johnston, pastor of the Lighthouse in Greensboro. She enjoys taking walks and reading books. And if you look in the chat, you can find out more about Princess. Princess, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. Also, who we have here is we have T. Walker. T. Walker is an artist, educator, gallery curator, and co-founder of Soul Society, a nonprofit organization focused on community empowerment and youth mentorship through the arts. T. Walker has toured the country opening for a variety of artists, including Saha the Prince, Nick Grant, Wise Intelligent of Poor Righteous Teachers, Sonny Patterson, KRS-One, and more. He utilizes his art to push forward conversation and discuss important topics through hip-hop, and he's had the opportunity to have a viewing of his gentrification music video at UNCG, North Carolina A&T, and the Harvey B. Gantt Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. He had the Vision Tour, and he headlined at the North National Black Theater Festival's Words and Verses, formerly known as Midnight Poetry Jam in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, alongside his Words Society poetry team. He completed this tour in February 2020. He has had a number of opportunities, including speaking alongside Mr. Kent Ford, founding member of the Portland Black Panther chapter of the 60s era. He's a phenomenal person doing some amazing work. And earlier it was mentioned that he's spearheading a class, a writing class that is going to be taking place very shortly. So you'll be able to see more information about that. And he is continually dedicated to fostering heavy education around our history, entrepreneurship, and storytelling through hip hop and poetry. That's T. Walker. T. Walker, we're glad you're here.
Glad to be here for sure.
And then of course we have Korinn Annette Jeffries, who is a playwright who works as both a creator and analyst of Black theater. She has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Professional Theater from North Carolina A&T State University. She studied theater for over 12 years. Her play, Nigger, An Examination of Otherness, was presented at the 2019 Black Theater Network Conference and the 2019 National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. In February 2020, Korinn's most recent play, The Water, was presented as a part of Peace of Mind Arts Black Women in Theater Festival in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Let me get that right. The Water has also been featured as a reading during the Dramatists Guild 2019 Footlights Reading Series in Charlotte, North Carolina. She's an active member of the Dramatists Guild and the Black Theater Network. Her study is on ritual, defined as a repeated activity, event, or action. Her works are centered around the practice of life, which is the being or existing, and what that looks like in the context of Blackness without restriction of a non-Black gaze. She is well respected for her work in theater, and I'm excited to have her here. Y'all, please welcome Korinn.
Hey, thank you.
All right. So before we even jump into some of the topics that we have intended for tonight, there are two parts to this conversation that I think is important that I want us to speak on first. One, this is called Black Voices, Vibrant Southern Cities, and there's two things about that I want to speak on, which I think are important, but oftentimes are overlooked in terms of a conversation. One is what it means to be a Black artist, and you interpret that however you decide to interpret that. So one is what it means to be a Black artist, and the second is what does it mean to be a Black artist creating work in the South. And I think that is how I want to go, how the foundation we want to build this conversation on, because I think it's important to have that conversation first. So whoever would like to start, I would like each one of you to speak to that. What does it mean to be a Black artist? And then what does it mean to be a Black artist creating work in the South?
Well, for me, to be a Black artist, sometimes I feel like even though I am a hip hop artist, it comes with a number of different stereotypes, so I have a lot of people that, already want to box me into what my artistry is going to be about, from one. So that's something I have to combat. And then when I introduce them to the fact that I am a hip hop artist and I do a number of things within the world of artistry, then it's a stereotype of what it is that I'm going to be speaking on and, about. So, I love the challenge though, because I love the idea. It's the very reason why I got into poetry. There were spaces that I couldn't go into with my hip hop music because people thought I was going to be doing a certain type of rap, certain type of music, so I would drop the beats and go into spaces and perform poetry. And a lot of times while I was living in Wilmington, Delaware, I had access to Philadelphia, but while I would be in Delaware, there would be all white spaces. So now it would be me going in there and changing the face of what even they thought of Black people, while being a Black artist in these particular spaces. So sometimes I feel like I have even more of a responsibility than some of my other white, counterparts. I have to speak for an entire group. I have to speak for my homies. I got to speak for, Black culture and in general. But I love the responsibility and I take that on and I put that on myself a lot. To be in the South, it's a whole nother thing because now you have the stereotype of sometimes the South is slower, and that we get things slower. But I love the idea of being able to connect with people all over the place, share my intellect, but also share the things that are relatable, about us, the opportunity to show that we aren't a monolith and be able to do it with my art. And I learned that at a HBCU by going there and seeing Black people do a number of different things that I didn't even know that they did. But as an artist, in the South, I get to display that and show that how we are really all connected, even while we have our differences. So I love it, and I look at the challenges and I embrace it.
Thank you.
No doubt.
For me, I would say that it's like a pressure to adhere to conservative ideals and respectability politics if you expect any success. I think there is a particular artist that's successful a particular Black artist that's successful in the South that creates a line of work that fits a stereotypical ideal of Blackness, like I said, wrapped up in respectability politics and conservativeness. Yes.
I know for me, being a Black artist has been quite a journey because I really just wanted to be an artist. And then it turns out I'm also Black. And so that means that I have the pleasure, but also the burden to represent an entire culture through my art. It can't just be an expression of myself. Everything I express is going to have some type of impact on the people that I represent. And it was a journey learning that, because when I first started creating, I was young. I was 8 years old. So I was just creating because I love to create. And as I got older and realized how the world is and the expectation of Black people from Black people and the expectation of Black people from white people and other cultures, it's just a lot of pressure on us to fulfill a need to be the Black thing in town. We're the only, well, we're not the only Black dance company in Greensboro, but we're the only one that has been funded through the local funding source that's here publicly. And so it puts a lot of pressure on us to make sure that we're representing our culture in the right way, like you said, respectability, politics, but also making sure that we do something for our people, but also wanting to create things that are just what we want to create, outside of it being about the pain of being Black or anything, just actual other human issues besides those that stem from being Black. So it's a line that you toe when you're creating as a Black person. It definitely is. And being in the South, my mom is from Pennsylvania, but my dad is from Shelby, North Carolina, which is outside of Charlotte. So I feel like I've had experience in both worlds, and it has benefited me some to be able to have so much, to have time that I've spent in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Philly, and just kind of absorbing that culture and bringing it to the South. But that also blinded me to the red tape that you find in the South that Black artists have a hard time getting through as far as exposure and access, to grant funding, or just, getting in the right circles and knowing the right people. So it's a lot of, it's a lot more challenging, I think, here in the South to be I guess, a self-sufficient or sustainable artist or arts organization.
Okay. So, Korinn, I want to come back to you for one moment. So you talked about conservatism, which is a very real thing, but you also talked about something that that I think we need to unpack a little bit more, and that's respectability politics. So, what I would like for you to do is just to talk a little bit about what you mean by that, and then to a little bit about what does that mean for artists, because respectability politics impacts all aspects of our life, but it does hold a particular weight for artists. So could you take a moment?
Sure. For me, respectability politics has played a role specifically in what I do, in that, my affiliation with the university I graduated from has a lot of connections that are intertwined with it. And I'm expected as a student of that university to uphold certain relationships with people in the community that I may not agree with, or that may just be blatantly racist. But, because they're funding things, I have to act a certain way with them. And, as the Black artist that I am, that's just not something I'm willing to do. So I find that it gets in the way of it.
Yeah. And one of the things about respectability politics is the idea that that you are expected or recommended to show up a particular way in various given situations, and that the response to you will be different, will be will be better if you do so. So when we talk about the idea of code switching, being able to converse and to move and to engage in different ways depending on who you're talking to, and having to be mindful of that. You're talking about everything from style of dress to overall appearance, to style of hair, to dress. What is acceptable dress for a given environment? These are all aspects of respectability politics that say that there is a particular way that you have to show up in the world. I think that when you talk about respectability and conservatism, that becomes a very important thing, because of course, we all have our distinct personalities as individuals. And then of course, culturally, Black folks have a variety of different kinds of experiences as Black people. But then you have artists who push the levels and push the boundaries of all things: identity, experience, vernacular, look, appearance, expression, and to place them under that and put them in that spot to have to consider being respectable in order to get opportunities is a tough thing for as an artist. I think before we move on, I think I want to make sure we ground this before we really get deep. And so I want to ask another question. And Princess, you brought up a good point by saying that, you know, you started by wanting to be an artist, but you also happen to be Black. And so with that comes expectations and a responsibility. Yep. Yep. Right. So with that being said, for each of you in your respective disciplines, talk a bit about both, and they may be the same, but I want to give an opportunity to widen it, about a few influences when you think about the work that you do. What are some of those influences, and specifically, who are some of those Black influences, those folks who have walked the steps that you're walking now? Who do you look to? Who are you studying? Who moved you, motivated you? And so if you could talk a little bit about that.
I primarily study artists from the Black arts movement, particularly Sonia Sanchez and Ntozake Shange. The work that they do being not something that's commercialized, having a more direct impact with the people that they plan on servicing with their art is very important to me. I hope to do something along the same lines.
I studied Jacob Lawrence while I was introduced to him by Dr. Bell at Winston-Salem State. He's a visual artist, but a lot of his philosophies I incorporate in my writings. So artists like him, I study Jay-Z, you know, just seeing how he maneuvers in the game. And I really use a lot of his verses as scripture, you know, like to be able to break down and sometimes be able to break it down to other young people, you know, what certain things mean, you know, how to, you know what I mean, speak, you know, the same language, maybe just in different words. I study, you know, Kanye, you know, I know a lot of people think he's crazy and out of here, but I can understand the idea of having crazy and out of here ideas and being so deeply passionate, and sometimes having to reel yourself back in and remind yourself to make sure that the people around you aren't just yes men, you know what I mean, or they aren't afraid of your ego and things of that nature. So those are Maya Angelou, you know, just in her journey, you know, and understanding that everything isn't always clean, but it's always continuing your journey. Sometimes we have a past, but if we are visionaries and moving forward, then we can fight through it and fight through these very deep things, even if we feel like we don't have a voice or people aren't hearing us. So those are a few of the artists that I study and look to.
When I first started out, I was into Alvin Ailey, and he, of course, Alvin Ailey, the American Dance Company, also Dwight Rhoden, who founded Complexions Contemporary Ballet, and then also Philadelphia. Those are all Black dance companies, and Dayton Contemporary, and you notice all of those are where they're in the North. There aren't many Black dance companies here in the South. Again, I wasn't starting my company to be like the first or anything. It became more and more apparent to me as time went by. We're 11 years old. So I also, lately, my muse has been Camille Brown. She has some really thought-provoking work, and just like her growth over the last 5 years has been astounding, and her story is amazing, and I really relate to her a lot. I think we're a lot alike and have a lot of the same energy, and we're kind of friends now, and so it's just been really good to have her as a mentor, to be able to actually really talk to someone who has like done what I want to do. So that's really been my inspiration more than anything lately, and so much so that like at one point I was ready to just quit, shut it down, go get me a corporate job and just be normal. And I had kind of shared this with Camille after she had kind of shared her story, how she had came to that kind of crossroads too at one point in her career where she's ready to shut it all down. And then if you're not familiar with her, she's just been having award after award, and has been given so many opportunities to choreograph on Broadway and just touring all over the world. And but there was a crossroad point for her too. And so I just was like, oh my God, thank you for sharing that. Because at one point I wanted to quit and you just like told my story. And so it's just been very uplifting to know her and to just kind of connect with her on that level.
So one thing that I want to talk, and I thank y'all all for giving us a good foundation for this conversation, is the idea that Black creative voices are vital for communities, whether it's culturally, whether it's in terms of civic engagement. The idea that they are vital, not that they're cool, not that they're welcome, not that but that they are absolutely vital for communities. That those Black voices, those Black creative voices were supported and heard. And so what I would love for y'all to talk about is about that idea that they are vital, that they're necessary, that they're important, that they're critical, and in that some of the ways that they're vital, and some of the benefits of being able to know that those Black voices need to be heard, those creative voices need to be heard.
Well, to me, they're always, and I speak on this a lot, that I feel like as part of the revolution, the hugest part is going to be the art. The fact that you can walk downtown Greensboro right now and see all of these visuals of that artists have created, based on their feeling, based on their emotion, and people have to drive by and think about what's going on every day. There were times where I was working during, the murder of Alton Sterling, and I would go to work and there were groups of people who were blind to what was going on. I think, with this art, being out here and right here in front of people's faces, people have to think about it. It forces a conversation, whether you think the art is disgusting and then you have to talk about the artist, but understand that art is the reason why you're having this discussion. Or if you're talking about, man, we need to change things and we need to organize our protests better. And then you have an artist like Kendrick Lamar who might drop it. It's gonna be all right. You give people theme songs, you can uplift people through the art. So I feel it's a very important piece. We carry the stories. You're gonna have a number of different people that tell stories. And I was watching one of KRS-One's videos, and he was talking about his story about how it's just something that people write, and sometimes it's lies, but the idea of being able to create for yourself and leave history, and for us to be able to, whether it's somebody in film who can write a movie about the 1898 massacre in Wilmington, that I lived 45 minutes to an hour away from Wilmington, North Carolina, and didn't hear about that in school. But because someone created the film, I was able to find out about this in later years and understand that there was a Black Wall Street in Wilmington, North Carolina, not far from where I grew up. So just having art, to be able to, how are we going to discuss this in 100 years? Are we going to discuss it because of music that we heard, because someone took time to write a book about what they, saw during this, because there's art that people took off of the buildings and have in different museums to discuss this very moment in 2020? So I feel like it's a very intricate piece, but then it's the reason why people want to sit down and actually want to organize better. I feel like we have different artists that are pushing a number of different conversations, whether it's a No Name who is starting book clubs and also forcing people to have conversations about a number of different things that's important right now. We're forcing people to really think. And that's very important, whether it's to escape the moment or to dive very deep into the moment.
I think a lot of times when people think about art, they just think about the expressiveness of it. But I think what's unique about Black artistic voices is that's also our form of resistance. It's another way to protest. It drives the energy of the movement. I remember in 2017, that was the Alton Sterling was 2017. And then I think it was like a cluster of events just like this last time where you had 3 different things is around the 4th of July. And I remember everyone being so angry that year as well, but I don't remember an artistic movement involved. And I think what's really unique about what's happening right now is you see these murals popping up, not just in Greensboro, but like all over the world and like on city streets and things. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's not going to bring policy change. But it is changing the entire movement. And when the entire movement has this type of fire and energy behind it, it puts the people who makes these policies, the people that we're fighting against, it puts them in a position where they have to do something, because they're so they can hear the voices, they can see the pain, they can see how real this is. This time is not just something that we're going to let blow over. Like T. Walker said, we have a constant reminder in your face that we need things to change, and the art is giving it that urgent feeling to it. And just it keeps the message out there in your face, whether it's you're actually there with the art, or someone went downtown and took a picture with the art and then they then posted it on their social media, or the newspapers are coming out to get the story, the television stations are coming. The story is getting really localized and focused in on the art, because I think that's a more digestive way for people to receive the message, by looking at the pretty colors and the art and the expression, even though some of it is really provoking. I think it can't get sabotaged like the protests, which people love to call riots. It can't become something that it's not, except for when the KKK decides they're going to come and deface it, and they make themselves look bad. But it doesn't make us look bad. It holds its integrity. So I think it's so important.
I have an unpopular opinion. I'm not pleased with the murals and things. I don't feel like it's necessarily helping. It feels like a more of a commodification and like propaganda. It doesn't feel like it's coming out of a place of resistance to me. I just saw a video on Twitter of police destroying emergency supplies on Black Lives Matter Plaza. It does not matter. They don't care. I really don't feel like people are stopping and seeing the art and being changed by it. I just don't. Like we've said, we've seen this happen over and over and over again. The art makes it feel like change is happening, because I think also a lot of people think that the city is commissioning it. And it feels like a Band-Aid, because a lot of these venues downtown, they can paint Black Lives Matter over the doors. It's still a racist establishment. There's still Black homeless people on the street begging for food every day. The issue is still there. But I do think Black art is vital. I just feel like it's not our job to educate through that art. Well, not our job to educate non-Black people on what we go through that art. And it feels like that's what we're doing by painting the murals, because it's in these downtown areas, which are being gentrified and predominantly non-Black at this point, besides the homeless population that we aren't taking care of. But
okay. So one of the reasons why I asked this question is that social movements have been the preeminent power, the catalyst for change in modern American times. And every movement and every moment of change has been chronicled in art and culture. One of the reasons why I think asking about the vitalness of it is, one, Black art, in any moment that you get to experience Black art, reminds people that there is both craft and genius, which sometimes gets downplayed as if there is not craft and genius to art when it's Black. And of course, the long-standing thing of gatekeeping and canons being made that do not include Black artists, but also that there is a perspective that comes through in the art, because culturally there is a sense of community. There's a sense of being connectivity. There's these things that come through culturally that I think are important. But I think y'all are raising something that is also important. So in this moment, there is the idea of who is the art intended for, and who is behind and supporting the art. And so there's that to be considered. I think what we are seeing in this moment is a tug of war over that's going to have to get reconciled. The world of art is resourced a particular way. In these moments, we are finding, and I know each of you have, I'm getting ready to ask you about that, because I think it's important for us to talk about what does it mean to know that the arts world is resourced a particular way, and that those who hold the resources that we have to look to for sustainability, the awards, fellowships, grants, all of those things put us in a position of having to navigate a particular kind of gatekeeping. And so what does that mean when you both are faced with an arts world that is resourced and supported in a particular way, while also trying to figure out how you can operate without needing that, and you can continue to create the art that you need and create it for the folks that you need it for?
I love that you asked that, because I'm actually in the process of trying to find a way to be sustainable without going to the same traditional resources, because those resources have not been beneficial to my organization. The structure of public funding for the arts, because even getting into private funding gets complicated as well, but just talking about public funding, which is supposed to be equitable, right? You have the NEA, which is the National Endowment for the Arts, which then trickles down to each of the states, who normally have some type of council, which then trickles into the counties. And then at the county and the state and the federal funding, you're supposed to have access to as artists or arts organizations. But Black artists and arts organizations are poorly funded across this nation, across this state, and within the city of Greensboro, from my experience. And then it puts you in a position as an artist or arts organization where you can either try to fight that system, or you can try to find a workaround without needing that system. I'm kind of in the middle doing both right now. I don't even know if the fight is worth it, if it will make any change. But I am speaking up about it. And even in speaking up about it, I've had people who have warned me I should not speak out against the people who fund my organization, which they don't even put a drop in the bucket compared to individual funders who give to my organization. So it goes back to that, showing up a certain way, talking a certain way, making sure that you don't speak out against these organizations, because if you do, then they might not fund you. But then it continues to be an ongoing problem, and you're allowing them to continue to undermine you, underfund you, undervalue what you bring to the table as a Black artist or arts organization. So it's a tricky, sticky situation. It is. And I have been asked by specific grant funders to, because if I have been honest about how they've been funding me or not funding me, I've been asked to retract statements about it, even though it's true. So what are we to do as Black artists in regards to accessing that and making sure we're sustainable? My biggest suggestion is that as Black artists, I think what has been successful for us has been getting individual funders and really working at my energy that way. And And each year I cut back on the amount of grants that I apply for. I spend more time getting to know people and talking to people and telling my story as a Black artist and just being open and honest about the issues that I've had navigating what's supposed to be public funding structures in place for artists to help us be sustainable.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
Well, I haven't actually utilized or any grants or anything for that particular reason, you know, like, because I know that
Waste of time.
either that or they're going to want to try to shape, you know, what it is that we do as an organization or that I do as an artist, and I'm not with that at all, you know. So in some cases, what I do is I create something that I can sell, you know, and hopefully, you know, in the hopes that, and in most cases it works out that people buy into, where I can fund the things, you know, that I'm looking to push forward, whether it's collecting, getting resources for a program that we're doing at a Dudley High School, or being able to do the online writers course, you know, that I'm doing, being able to get funding in other ways to be able to find those resources, because I haven't wanted to combat that, because I'm gonna see, if somebody puts me in a position like that, I'm gonna have to speak on it, you know, and I don't want to be in a position where now my funding for my organization is dependent upon that. So like, but I am with collaborating with other organizations to pull our resources together, because I don't want everything to be so focused on my particular organization. I want to be able to collaborate and connect with other people who have resources. So if you got it, let's link up, you know, and then we can share resources or ideas and other ways to bring funding in, because that's not anything I want to deal with.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I can
recommend it.
and I've had situations where I might have been creating a peace festival and had to go through certain channels, and I've seen what it's like to deal with these channels. So I can only imagine what it's like when it comes to funding. And then it's like, but we paying you to do this, so I need you to cut your locks or whatever it is. Then I'm like, nah, you know. So that's just not gonna happen. So definitely finding other ways. But one of my ways of working around that is collaboration.
Okay. Anyone else? No. So one of the things, there was someone who mentioned the lack of Black artists and administrators and arts organizations. That is a very critical thing. Not only the lack of Black artists and Black arts administrators, but the lack of attentiveness to arts organizations and the nature of arts as an industry in general. There are organizations who cannot survive off grant funding, even though that is the thing that people bring up all the time. There has to be individual donor support so that those funds can be unrestricted, so artists and arts administrators can create and support the kind of work that's necessary. So forming and building a basis of supporters of arts, groups that can decide that they're going to invest money into arts organizations, and especially into Black arts organizations, Indigenous arts organizations, and other arts organizations of color, because that donor base is how that's going to survive. Encouraging artists and arts administrators, supporting them, backing them, depending on the environment that they're working in. As an arts administrator, that idea of being one in an office, it gets old real quick. You get tired of being the one in the office. You get tired of being the one in the meeting. You get tired of being the one. So there has to be support and encouragement of broadening the pool of arts and arts administrators. And I think what y'all have also brought up, and I'm doing this because I know that, you know, as we lay this landscape out, thinking about the things that you're bringing up and how they lead to solutions, pushing to change the funding structures and the transparency of those kind of funding structures, making sure that there is support for the kinds of merchandise and product that artists are selling, thinking about how there can be greater awareness of what artists are in a community and what they are offering. Especially in North Carolina, where there are few arts outlets for there being a focus on what art is available. How can we support there being art outlets where that kind of work can be there? and also just being mindful of the fact that there is amazing art being created in our community, and it needs focus. The Arts Council needs to be held to the fire. They're in a situation where they're trying to, they're looking at changing the dynamics. They recognize and they know that the support being given has not been adequate. But I am happy about the work that the folks involved with folk art have been doing in terms of looking at millennial artists and the diversity and range of artists that have been highlighted as a part of that. But there's more work that's got to be done across the board, and there's nothing that can be held up as a thing to say, hey, we've done it. Right. So those are some of the kinds of things that I think that y'all are bringing up that need to be highlighted. Here's another one, and I know that me and Deanna were talking about this, and the Korinn called it an unpopular opinion, but I don't think that it's unpopular. I think it's
that's actually the popular one.
Yeah, it's a necessary thing. Here's the thing about that is that I've always been an advocate for folks considering art, which means that when you have an artist like Korinn who looks to the Black arts movement in terms of inspiration, any movement for change or catalyst in the city or in the area should know who Korinn is and know what her work is. So that when there's art created, that art is an extension of the kinds of things that the city and the community is calling for. To leave artists to have to navigate by themselves and then there to be this expectation of what that means is unfair. But artists aren't considered. And I know each one of you can think about all of the things that happen in your city that you have a perspective about that you don't get called to be involved in. But once they move, you're expected to create art that reflects whatever that's doing. And that becomes, for Black artists, that becomes a very taxing thing for there to not be a greater sense of art as a tool, as a strategy, as a necessary part of anything that anybody is doing. So I think that in terms of thinking about the kinds of solutions, these are some of the things that I think have already been highlighted. So what I want to do right now is preserving culture was a question that was raised. I would like for each of your disciplines, when you hear the idea of how do we preserve our culture, what kind of response do you have to preserving our culture? And for me, I also want to add, as you answer that to preserve it without creating platforms for it, I think does it a disservice, because we can preserve it, but if we don't create platforms, then we know, especially when it comes to Black artists, that dead artists get better promotion. So what does it mean to create platforms for and to preserve our culture and our artistry?
I think in terms of creating platforms for the preservation of our arts and culture, I think that comes from like being able to create opportunities for other people. I think about artists in my field who have created plays that or Black artists in my fields who have created plays that don't employ Black people. And I don't feel like that is effectively preserving our culture, because if you don't write it, who will? But then also, as a Black artist, again, Princess, like what you were saying about the pressure to create a certain type of art, or like, a revolutionary type art, but I think in practice of being a Black person and creating art, like it's revolutionary in nature. You don't necessarily have to do any extra, I guess, preservation of culture because you are the culture. You create it as the artist. Right. So, I mean, I think by creating the art and the opportunity.
Yeah, I was struggling with that term, preservation of culture,
Hmm.
because like I said, I was never approaching art to preserve culture, make it about my blackness. I just wanted to use art because I love it. I love to dance. I love to create dance. And so for me, I feel like it's more like an evolution rather than a preservation.
So I guess I'm looking at it from a historical context, like whether you look at it as a preservation or not, the people who will study you after you will be studying your art, and it's
Right.
preserved. So, just thinking about you as you create whatever you want, don't feel like you're preserving culture, of course, but by existing and creating, you're creating culture, you're preserving yourself. I feel like I think about my works and I hope that somebody looks back and studies them, hopefully.
Well, I want to build on that. Like you said, what we do, we already are an expression of it, whether our goal is to preserve it or not, but the presenting opportunities. So in my field, I work with young people. So, and a lot of times I tell them I'm a hip hop artist, they want to rap. So my thing is educating them on the lineage, of hip hop, not that they have to be that, but, know what came before you, as you continue to evolve this, because it isn't meant to stay the same. Things are meant to change. So continue to evolve it. That is going to continue to grow it and expand it. So I think just educating, period, on the lineage and on the transformations that is continuously made. Because I feel like a lot of times, even as things change and evolve, then we try to be like, oh, it shouldn't go that way because this is what culture is. And it's like, now we put culture in such a box
Right.
that we really don't get to experience the beauty of it by allowing it to evolve and evolving with it. So I think that's preservation enough, evolving with it.
Right. So rather than narrowing the expectation, widening our understanding of it, so that
Right.
we can, which comes with a responsibility, to seek out art. We, like continuously, not just wait for someone, because there's a thing about waiting until someone gets presented to us. And then being like, oh, okay, as opposed to seeking out. Because there are folks in communities who have no idea who the artists are that are creating in their communities, until y'all do something somewhere, and then that makes it back to them. So not only, you can, like Korinn said, you creating is creating and adding to a lineage, and is preserving you, and then that adds and creates culture. Which means that people need to be looking for you, and continuing to look for you, and then through that support, that continues on. So, I mean, there are things like
something on that.
Yep.
I think that Black artists should be pushed in this. Everybody's all about, we got to support Black-owned businesses. Where are they? We have to support them. They need to be doing the same thing when it comes to Black artists, like looking for your local Black artists. That should be happening as a part of this movement as well. I totally agree.
And what's interesting about that is that it's happening on a small scale, and a lot of people are upset about it because they feel like it's not the pressing issue right now. It's kind of ridiculous because they don't realize how impactful art has been throughout, like you said, throughout all the movements that have happened in the past. The art is what we study, and then we get an idea of what was going on from there. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's
even like Vanessa Ferguson, y'all all know her now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, she talks about how life before The Voice and life after, and coming back to Greensboro, and she's just like, it pisses her off sometimes, because it's like, I've been here doing this work, and now everybody want to act like they love me and they know me, and no one was paying me any attention. I was just out here struggling artist like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, and actually she was traveling internationally already. It's just no one locally knew who she was, and now everyone's always calling her and trying to use her for different events. It's just, we need to be sought out.
Right. So in terms of thinking about solutions, is creating a consciousness of seeking out talent that is close to you. and that needs to happen. And Black artists do need to be supported locally. Y'all are right about that. And in this moment, I've been a part of conversations. You know, there was an artist in Charlotte who got very pissed off because there was art that was created there, but that was referred to as an empty gesture. And he was like, how do you tell artists that their art is an empty gesture? And I'm like, for some reason, this moment makes people feel like that the last thing anybody needs is art, which to me says that people don't need encouragement, motivation, inspiration, joy, reflections of their self and their human. Like, how do we as artists understand all that we put into the art and then have someone feel like that at any point that's not necessary? Korinn?
I think it goes back to like Du Bois and like the idea of propaganda and art, because I feel like a lot of stuff that's coming out right now is purely propaganda. And I believe it was all art is propaganda, but not all propaganda is art. Not all of it is art. It's very reactionary. It's very much like, hey, can you go paint something? Okay, cool. Art takes a little bit more thought than that.
But I think it's a part of the creative process too. I know a part of the creative process is that first draft, that just get in the studio and let the music play, put the pen to the paper, you know, and start writing it out. And then so right now sometimes art is just that raw, real reactionary emotion. I think there's a difference between like performance art and like just internal art, but it's being shared on a public platform. Is it propaganda? Yes. Is it hurting the movement? Some things are, and I have issues with some things. But I think the overall impact of it and how it, like you said, how it uplifts the community, because just let's face it, this movement is extremely exhausting. That first week, I wasn't eating, like I couldn't, it was a lot. And I can honestly say, like, seeing that artwork going up, it lifted my spirits, because I was just so like I was just so angry, like, and just my anxiety was on 10,000, and art helps that stuff. So maybe it's not going to move policy, but maybe it's about the individual. Maybe it's about the community. So maybe it's not going to get the police to change their laws or change their stupidity and the dumb things that they keep doing, but it does help the individual.
I had a major conflict, you know, myself as an artist, as a poet, because I had things that I wanted to say, but then I saw, and all of my music has been in this vein, you know, but I saw so many people like that I personally felt like were being opportunists and just using this as a moment to be like, all right, boom, I'm on the platform now. I say something revolutionary, and I mean, I didn't want to like judge it, but I also felt like, all right, there's so many opportunists out here. I don't even want to get caught in the opportunist cycle, you know, or it even to be perceived as that. And to hear you say that someone, you know, told the artist in Charlotte that it was, I don't even remember how you said it was, but I would have felt disrespected, you know. So I was like, all right, you know, but because I do feel the way that I do, and I'm really out here, you know, with the action, I'm gonna still move things forward in the way that I know how to. I just didn't want to get caught in a particular cycle. So it has been a conflict.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's a difference, and this was, you know, there is a difference, what I think you're bringing up is there is a difference between the practice of making art in a particular way, and making revolutionary art, making radical art in whatever way you position yourself, and reacting to a moment. And that's always the case. There's always a reaction. But I think the what's valuable to me about calling this out, because it's very real. There are opportunists. There are folks who see a moment there, and it's going to keep happening in our society, because moments are held to a greater significance than we're just a moment oriented society. And so many of our outlets have been affected by it. Journalism has been affected by it. The desire to create content It's to the point where things don't even get copy edited well anymore. You know, like so many things that are intended to be craft oriented and particularly to be skilled have been impacted by this desire to make use of the moment. And we've all been sped up. But I think it's important to note that that doesn't have to be the case. And there are folks who continuously do work and continue to build and grow, because there's a conversation about that this is a moment, but this moment moving forward, there has to be a change, and there has to be a sustained, you know, there has to be a sustained effort going forward. So then it comes back to those who continuously create work that can continue to reach people. And so, because this moment, because the moment, folks, this moment will move and there'll be another moment and they'll move to that moment. But all of the folks who have been, you know, reached are going to continue to want to be fed, and it's going to turn to the artists who create radical, revolutionary, creative, genre pushing, beautiful, thoughtful, craftful art to continue to feed folks. But I think it is important to continue to raise that question of reactionary art to true revolutionary and radical art. And I think that's important. So I want to ask you, as an artist, does this moment feel different as an artist to you? I think it's an extension of what we've been talking about. Does it, because of who you are,
right?
Does this moment feel different to you as an artist?
I think I was already changing myself, and so this moment just kind of fit in with where I was. Because like I said, I was not like a speaker for Black people. I was not putting myself in that position, but I've learned that because my organization is in the position it is, and that I'm in the position that I am, that there are other Black artists and organizations that could use the knowledge and the contacts and the resources that I have access to. And I want to make sure I am holding space for all Black artists in Greensboro. Like, it's important to me. So that was becoming something that I was working on in the last 2 to 3 years, is building a better platform for Black artists in Greensboro. Being vocal in meetings and pointing out the fact that there's like 2 Black arts organizations in our city who get funding and support. And that's the problem. And we have all this hidden talent in our city, and we don't even have a history here. In our 200-year history, I don't know of a thriving Black arts organization from Greensboro. You got the Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem. You have Bubba Chuck in Durham. Those are 2 Black organizations that had a pretty good reputation in our state, but those are only 2 that I can actually name. And so I see a problem there that I really would like to be helpful with. So when all of this revolution started, I had already internally been having my own little internal personal revolution, so to speak. And so this just added fuel to the fire for me. And I'm just in a different place as an artist, as a person, where I just I wanted to do more myself. I didn't want to, preserve my mental space. It was real easy for me to just, I got to preserve my mental. I can't get too involved with all of that. But I was willing to like just let myself feel that anger and that fire with what's happening, and just really looking at our truth, because sometimes the truth for Black people is just, it makes you so angry, because it's something that can be fixed so easily, but you have people who are just being very stubborn and want, like, literally go out of their way to oppress us and kill us. And yeah, so it was time that I did something.
For me, no, it has not. It does not feel different for me. It does kind of. No, it doesn't feel different for me. It reminds me of like I remember when the Mike Brown verdict came out because I was a freshman at Howard and I walked down to the White House in the middle of the night and it was like 10 of us out there. That's what it reminds me of. And how that situation turned out and how so many of these situations turn out over and over and over again. Um, I hope that it's different. I do like to see the white actors removing themselves from the Black characters that they voice. I've enjoyed that. I think that we need to continue to work in that direction in my field, particularly. Representation is very, very important. But other than that, no, it feels like it does every single time it happens. So
It feels certain things I'm seeing different, because I am seeing some people educate themselves in ways that they never did before, which I'm like, yo, and I've had to change my delivery and how I've tried to deliver things to people before. But I'm like, yo, this has always been in front of you. We've always tried to tell you about, certain policies or things in the past or history. But I've had family members, I've had homies that like I've tried to understand things and do through my music that are like, yo, I just now discovered the Wilmington Massacre documentary. And I'm like, yeah, this has always gone on. So, and of course, that's something way years ago. But I am seeing something different as far as people educating themselves, and maybe it's because they are seeing this every day on TV. They're in places where, yeah, we've seen these protests, in large groups before, but I don't know. I'm seeing some people that weren't impacted before be impacted this time and educate themselves in a certain type of way, and that's one of the things that I'm seeing different. And I'm hoping and I'm optimistic about the fact that this is going to continue to flow and they're going to continue to further educate themselves, not even worry about who it is that they have to educate. Now, we're going to see how long this really lasts. What's feeling weird to me is seeing, the NFL come out and speak. And I don't really buy all that. I'm really with the cut the check, because like capitalism is really is a huge issue, so like, yeah, you only speaking because this can affect your money, not because you care about the lives. So I'm seeing these different conversations happen amongst groups that I've never seen them happen before. So those are the only things that I'm seeing different that I'm used to seeing. Other than that, it's like, are y'all gonna forget about this once it's over?
Right.
I will say that for me, the one thing that feels different in this moment is y'all. And I say that because I'm older, and the y'all. I tell you, boy, in this moment, I think for those of us who are my age, we are seeing y'all in a different way. And as an older Black artist, I just want to say that out loud. That, and the same thing happened to me and my elders. But what I'm encouraged by is that everyone that I'm talking to who's in my age group is determined to try to not repeat the same battles we had in a moment like this with our elders, with y'all. And so I think that there's, at least for us, the one thing that I am recognizing is an open, outward conversation that says that we're going to try to like make sure that we show up and listen and stay out of the way and be supportive of y'all in a different way. I'm also curious to see if that sustains, because what we also ran into before was that we got some of that, and then there was a moment where it was like, all right, young person, we got this, and then we tugged the war. And I hope that in this moment that we understand we can't replicate that again, and we've got to like make sure that we are true to task and letting y'all be who y'all be. Go ahead, Korinn.
Oh, I was just going to say that I do think that one reason this time may feel different is because people have been stuck inside and have nothing else to do than be on their phones and circulate the images that we've been seeing. And then when they had the opportunity to get out the house and go to a protest, they treated it like a party and were just doing all sorts of things. So it's my concern, again, is the, I guess, commodification of this whole movement and all of the propaganda that surrounds it. It just seems very forced and fake to me.
So yes, and I think that is a concern that's being echoed. And one of the things, and then I want to allow for to move to some audience questions before we close, is because you raised the question of, with so much going on, is it performative or is it real? Is there going to be change? Is it rhetoric? Is it propaganda? Is it empty? And I think that the true test of that is how everything moves forward. And I think that this is one of the ways that, artists, especially Black artists, can be useful, because we have we tend to have a short memory in this country. And one of the things that can happen is that there needs to be a marker of this moment. There needs to be markers of these moments that can stand the test of time. So that's both about how this moment is captured in art, but the quality and the sincerity and the depth of the art. There has to be support for art that tells the truth of these moments. I know for each one of you, y'all have seen that. Korinn, I know you've watched this in theater world, where unless it's trendy, the truth telling and storytelling is not supported and put on stage. And then when it does, it gets celebrated in a way that makes it seem like something's been done, but it's not. And then the next 20 Black playwrights can't get anything supported. So these moments, the true art, the art that's being created needs to be supported, but also that ongoing agitation and a vision of what change looks like need to be captured in a place that stands the test of time, and capturing it in art is a way for people to always know where it is and grab to it. So there's a possibility for help and sustain this, but it goes back to all the other things you said. We got to be wary of commodification. We got to be wary of propaganda. There's got to be resources and support, and people need to be able to seek things in the way. Everybody out there watching, talk to your arts councils and all the organizations where you go consume art, and ask them, where is the art? Where's the Black art? Not one show a year that y'all try to meet your diversity numbers, because we know that's happening.
February.
Because it helps you get grants. Like, seriously, where are the workshops? Where are the master classes? Because that's the true test of whether y'all supporting Black artists. Don't bring them in for an evening. Where are the master classes? Where are the workshops? Where are all of the things?
Where are you housing them?
Exactly.
We have a cultural arts center here in Greensboro. It has one Black arts organization in it. These arts organizations get the benefit of having no rent or utilities to pay because the city covers it. And it has been housing like pretty much the same white organization since the late 80s. And we wonder why Black artists, and then when we submit our grant requests, they say that we're not sustainable. But we're
also mean about putting up posters in the building.
Oh yeah, then if you're not in the building, you can't promote your organization there.
Ridiculous.
Girl, I be in their meetings like, so who's gonna pay my rent?
Yeah. And space is such a big thing in North Carolina. There is not enough space to put art. There are not enough venues with wall space for visual art. There's not spaces that are big enough to stage performances. There are not enough theaters. Community theaters end up going out of business. It's hard to get into established venues that are owned by organizations or by the city. It's expensive. There are just not enough spaces. There are not enough performance venues. So you know, all the hurdles and hoops that you have to jump through just make it worse. And what tends to consistently happen is Black artists are creating work and placing work in spaces. We're making work happen in spaces that aren't conducive to our art, but we're creative enough to figure out how to put them in spaces that are willing to work with us. And we do it consistently. And folks show up. Y'all know I do. Folks show up and applaud you and tell you it was amazing that you figured out how to make this work in this space. Your lighting ain't right. You know?
Then they tear it apart because it didn't look like Carolina Theater.
Yeah. And it's just,
But then they don't give you money to afford Carolina Theater.
You get pat on the back for surviving in spite of, and that has to change.
Yeah.
If you're, you know, in terms of our artists, you know, it's audience. Of course, the chat is open. If there are, you know, any closing questions before we close that you would like to ask, I'm trying to, you know, want to look and see if there's any that we, you know, didn't touch on in some form of fashion. I think that we've done a good job of talking about a lot of them. Y'all, I think, and appreciate y'all. Is there upcoming work that you have that is coming up in progress that you would like to tell the world about?
Well, I do have a writing workshop, an online writing workshop that we will be facilitating called Heart and Soul. It is open to all writers, poets, authors, screenwriters, whatever your medium of writing is, you know, and it will be starting July 5th. If you know any middle school, high school age students that you feel like would benefit from, you know, being amongst the art community with other creators, there will be featured visual artists who will be submitting their work as writing prompts, as well as writing workshops that will be conducted, and open mics for everyone who is a part of it and is registered. But yeah, that will be kicking off July 5th. Registration is available on my website, heavyenergyuniversity.com, and it is open to all writers.
Okay.
And I am also doing a workshop. Mine is called Exploring Language with Shakespeare, and it's a 5-part online course that helps you put a Shakespearean monologue or sonnet into your own words using your personal vernacular as a means of exploring Shakespeare. I'll put the link in the chat for the Eventbrite if you guys want to sign up, and it'll be available until August 4th.
That's right. You better teach people about Shakespeare.
That's my mom's birthday. Well, the dance company was actually on a 2-year hiatus. We actually were paying performing dance artists to be in our company. There are 5 of us total, and we have a choreographic team of 4 people. And due to frustrations with continuously not receiving enough funding to pay the artists for rehearsal and performance, because we were only paying for performance, we went on a hiatus as a kind of just to make a point that we're not going to continue to create and like you said, be creative with how we make things happen and be resourceful at the expense of the artist. We want to make a statement that we want our artists to be fully paid for to work for us. And so we actually raised enough money to bring the company back, and then COVID-19 happened. So we're still kind of on hiatus. We've been doing some video projects, so you can check them out on our Facebook page. We did a Conquering COVID-19 series where we took some of our repertoire and put it into video footage from us basically performing the piece from our homes and then putting it all together into a video. It's inspired by Alvin Ailey's Still We Dance series. And then we also did a Juneteenth project because we had actually received a small grant from Arts Greensboro to do a Juneteenth arts celebration where we were actually going to be, our thing that we wanted to do this year before COVID-19 was find the Black artists, get them a nice venue, a place where they can get where they can perform or sell their art, set up a marketplace and things like that. But since we weren't able to do that, we just created a film that told the history of Juneteenth and also the Magnolia House, which is here in Greensboro. If you're not familiar with it, it's a part of the Green Book, and a lot of Black artists stayed there when they would come to Greensboro during the segregation era. And so we kind of told those stories and did some performances with Vanessa Ferguson in our dance company, and then also a spoken word piece with Dr. Zitty. So you can check out our Facebook and our Instagram and see more of that. And as far as us coming back, performing art is a challenge, but we're just kind of focusing on film and trying to see where we'll go from there.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of y'all for all of your wisdom, and anybody who's watching, go click all these links, support these artists.
Links for days.
You know, you need all that, and you want to get educated and get you want to get click all the links and show up for everything, and make sure these artists are supported, and just continue to be on the lookout. This is a time in the midst of all of this. There's a call. Well, let me not say there's a call. I'm tired of saying there's a call. There isn't a call. There is the reality of what Black folks go through in this country. And there are a lot of people who consider themselves lovers of Black art as if they have not been paying attention to the stories that are told in that Black art for years. And so Black art is going to keep getting created, but it's time to accept the reality of what it means to be Black in this country, and also to continue to make sure that those stories continue to get told and called to task. If you are non-Black, you have access to venues and you have access to arts donors and supporters. It's time to not just have conversations about bias and racism. It's time to call the task where the monies get spent and what gets presented by these arts organizations. As an arts administrator, it's time for y'all to start saying that there needs to be resources dedicated to Black artists, period. And then, so that's step one, so that they can stop some of the things that they're doing. And because this we also want to make sure that that when you think about PEN America, as a national organization, and them being willing to have a conversation like this, that's important. There are artists like these three all around who can have these kinds of conversations. Invite them to have conversations, take care of them when they come to have conversations, and let them, you can only find solutions when you actually hear from the sources and from those within the communities being affected what kind of obstacles there are. If you don't listen from the voices within that community, then whatever solution you come up with is inadequate, because it's not informed by the people who are affected. It's informed by your own bias, ego, or guilty conscience. So let's start making sure that these kinds of voices are held up, and that more of these conversations happen, especially in this time we are virtual. This is the time to explore and learn something, and these are the kind of voices that you can learn from. I think, and it's been an honor and pleasure for me to moderate this conversation. Deanna, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dasan. And thank all of you. This really was a wonderful hour and a half, and I learned so much. I want to say what I think is important about vibrant Black voices is that white stories have limitations. And white stories are the stories that we hear so often. And all stories have limitations, but when it's just a white story that's being told over and over, it's limiting the stories that we can tell about our communities, the stories we can tell about ourselves, and the stories we can tell about our city, and the stories we tell about the South. And for me, as a white person, I'm tired of the limitations of white stories. I want to hear other stories. That's the only way new stories are gonna happen. And I hear this coming up that we wanna bring Black voices to the table, or build our people of color to the table. I think we should just rebuild the table, right? Just rebuild the table. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank PEN sponsoring this conversation tonight. You can learn about PEN at pen.org. Scuppered on Books is an independent bookstore in Greensboro, North Carolina that believes that books and writers matter to the intellectual life of the city. And the North Carolina Writers Network elevates writers of North Carolina. You can learn more at ncwriters.org. I want to thank everybody for taking time tonight. Princess says she started a Facebook group for Black artists in Greensboro to have a conversation about our voice. Search Black Artist Voices in Greensboro and request to join. They have a conversation coming Thursday night. Thank you, Korinn and T. Walker and Princess and Dasan, and thank you all for listening. Go out and do great things.